Now, usually I don't upload on Sundays because Sundays is for football, right? But something happened yesterday that I couldn't go a whole nother day without talking about, and that was, of course, the Jimmy Butler trade. As a fan of Jimmy Butler and as a fan of the NBA, I think it's my right, my obligation to make this video talking about this trade. If you've been living under a rock, the trade details is basically Jimmy Butler got traded to the 76ers for Dario Saric and Robert Covington and Jared Bayless, second round pick. But it's mostly those two pieces, Rocco and Dario. In today's video, we're going to be breaking down this trade and giving my initial reactions. Again, these are all my reactions without seeing them fellas on the floor together. So I may make some predictions about different lineups that may end up being better than I expected or worse than I expected. But regardless, let's take it one step at a time. Let's talk about the Timberwolves side of this trade. So a month ago is when Jimmy Butler went into practice and balled up on his teammates, and then he went on to ESPN and told the whole world a situation that was going on in Minnesota. As a normal NBA fan, I thought that was it. That was the last straw. There was no way Jimmy Butler was going to be suiting up for the Minnesota Timberwolves after all of this. But obviously he did, and he stayed there for like 10 or so games. And in these 10 or so games, we saw a lot of stuff. Honestly, it's very weird to me that it took the Minnesota Timberwolves this long to trade Jimmy Butler. If all the rumors are true and that Karl-Anthony Towns and Jimmy Butler hated each other, that Wiggins and Jimmy Butler hated each other, and that they just didn't feel comfortable with him in the locker room, how can you, as a general manager, how can you, as the owner of the team, let this guy who seems like he's a cancer to your young players stay in his locker room? They did it for a minute, and I guess that loss against Sacramento the other night, Thibodeau was like, okay, I guess we can't win when our teammates don't like each other. And then boom, he shipped it out. So the return, Dario and Robert Covington. Let's talk about what the Minnesota Timberwolves have been for the past season or so. They've had Jeff Teague at the 1, Jimmy Butler at the 2, Wiggins at the 3. I mean, you can switch who's the real shooting guard, small forward, don't matter. Taj Gibson and Karl-Anthony Towns. One thing you immediately realize about that roster is they don't have shooters. But now, with Dario and Rocco, they kind of have some shooting now. You know, the Timberwolves they sucked when it came to the spacing. But Rocco and Dario, they shoot the ball pretty well. And I think that's going to be a plus for Karl-Anthony Towns because now he's got more versatility. Like, they had Taj Gibson's playing in the corner a lot because he has increased his three-point ability over the past couple years. But for the most part, they really now have a threat on that three-point line that teams legitimately cannot leave. Because though Taj Gibson has made a couple threes, he still ain't a knockdown shooter. So you can kind of live with leaving him off. You can't leave a Rocco. You can't leave a Dario. Even though Dario so far this season started off pretty slow, we can all agree that teams are going to be guarding him like he's a knockdown shooter because for the most part, he is. But there are some things, man. I wish we knew everything. I wish we knew everything that teams threw at them for Jimmy Butler. Because it was over a month that Jimmy Butler was on the market. And best believe that GMs around the league were picking up their phones and calling them like, we got this. Rumor have it, Daryl Morey and the Rockets offered 4 first-round picks. And the Timberwolves said no. Rumor has it that Pat Riley offered Josh Richardson, Kelly Olynyk, and a first-round pick before the season started. And the Timberwolves said no. And now they finished with Rocco and Dario. Now, you can be a decider of which trade you think would have been best for the team. But regardless, I'm sure teams threw their name into that Jimmy Butler sweepstakes. And this was the deal that they finally agreed on. I think, though, for the most part, this trade is kind of a W for the Minnesota Timberwolves. It took way too long. So because of that, I'm docking it a little bit. But for the return, I think it's going to work out for basically the spacing reasons. No, neither of these two guys are superstars or have the potential to be superstars like Jimmy Butler. But now you're going to have a happy Karl-Anthony Towns, hopefully a happy Wiggins, and things are about to go down. See, one thing that people have been saying about Wiggins is that the fact that Jimmy Butler was there was really holding Wiggins back. Jimmy Butler ain't that no more. So this is all Wiggins' time. This is where Wiggins needs to show the world that he was worth that extension he got. Because for the most part, he's got a lot of doubters out there. Without Jimmy Butler, this is his prime real estate. This is where he needs to pick up that ball and become the guy that they want him to be, the guy they paid him to be. Will that happen? I don't really know. But now with all these tools, I think that the Minnesota Timberwolves are in a good spot. Let's be real. Derrick Rose has became a knockdown shooter. He's shooting 47%. Yes, I don't know off the top of, I know that off the top of my head because it's Derrick Rose. 47% from 3. You got Dario, who's a knockdown shooter, again, even though he's struggling, and Rocco, one of the best 3-and-D guys in the league. I think they're going to be decent. And then you still got the rookie Josh Okogie, who's playing so well off their bench. This may not be a year they make the playoffs, but don't be surprised if they still stay competitive and do make the playoffs. I'm giving this trade for them a B, and we'll reevaluate it after we see them play together a couple games. Next, the Philadelphia 76ers. They get the superstar. Let's break this down. So when the trade initially happened, I went to Twitter and was like, what do y'all think that their starting lineup is going to look like? Most people said this was going to be the lineup. It's going to be Markelle, JJ, Jimmy, Ben Simmons as the point forward, and then Joel Embiid. And honestly, that's the lineup that makes the most sense. But some people said, no, Wilson Chandler's going to start at the 4, and JJ is still be coming off the bench. Regardless of what their lineup is going to look like, they have another star. And sometimes I watch the Philadelphia 76ers in these close games, and I'm like, man, I think they'll benefit so much if they had a for sure closer. JoJo has been very solid closing this year. But having 2 closers on a team is going to be incredible, because you don't know if it's the night that Jimmy Butler takes the game winner, or you don't know if the night that Joel takes the game winner. Now, I think we can all agree that so far in the season, the Philadelphia 76ers have been relatively disappointing. Yes, they're still a good team, but they have not been coming out the gate the way we expected them to be. And I have my ideas on why, but that's for another video. This trade puts them in that Eastern Conference champion boat. It really does. Before this trade happened, it was kind of a 3-headed monster. You had Toronto, you had Boston, and now the Milwaukee Bucks have been playing so great, you can't just leave them out. But now, with Jimmy Butler, who's a top 15 player added to this roster, it is impossible for you to say that this team is not competing for the Eastern Conference Finals champions or competing to win a championship. But there are some things about this roster right now that I just don't like. And one of them is the spacing is going to be trash. Like, I just raved about how Minnesota Timberwolves, their space is going to be a lot better. The spacing for the 76ers is going to be a struggle. Right now, JJ Redick is attempting 8 threes a game. He is their only 3-point shooter right now. They got rid of Dario. They got rid of Rocco. If that is their starting lineup of Fultz, Jimmy, and Ben Simmons in the same lineup, that team is going to struggle to shoot the ball, realistically. But I'm sure they're going to make it work out. I mean, most times if you have good players, they make it work out, you know? So JJ is going to have a lot of work on his hands on being their only 3-point shooter right now. And this is kind of a thing I had going into this season also. They lost Marco Bellinelli. They lost Ersan Ilyasova in free agency. And those 2 pieces alone made them so much more dangerous when we got around to the late part of last season or in the playoffs, just because they were impossible to guard because they were running all over the place and they knocked down shots. The 76ers don't have those shooters anymore. Their best shooters right now is JJ, who's one of the best we've ever seen at shooting, and the rookie Landry Shamet, is that his name? Those are their best shooters. They have no other shooters, and they don't have much depth. They're very top-heavy. And we've seen teams be successful while being top-heavy. Prime example is the Miami Heat, but maybe you say the Miami Heat had LeBron, and every LeBron team is relatively successful. But they're top-heavy, but I think it's going to work. When the buyout market finally hits, one guy I feel like is going to get bought out before the season is over is Trevor Ariza. Maybe Trevor Ariza goes to Philly. Teams are going to want to play for Philly. And now we about to really find out how Jimmy Butler is in his locker room. Because he's been in 2 places, in Chicago, if he's been there in Minnesota, both situations, he somehow left on a bad note. Something had to do with him not getting along with players, coaching, whatever. In Philly, things are going to be different. Jimmy Butler's kind of an alpha dog type guy, but so is Ben Simmons. And so is Joel Embiid. Like, Jimmy Butler went into that interview and he said one thing that he hates about playing for the Minnesota Timberwolves is that he can't be 100 with a teammate without the world thinking that he hates that teammate, or without that teammate thinking that he hates them. I'm telling you, if Jimmy Butler gets on JoJo's case, JoJo's either going to listen to him and not get upset, or he's going to fire right back. JoJo, I would say, is mentally stronger than Karl Anthony Towns and Wiggins, but that's from an outsider looking in. Same thing with Ben Simmons. People that met Ben Simmons also always say that he's kind of a jerk because he knows that he's so good. And sometimes having that mindset in the basketball game is a good thing. So I think that these three heads could collide, but it could be a match made in heaven at the same time. There's just so many variables that go into this. I'm just super excited to watch all these teams play. If I'm a free agent shooter, I'm making sure my manager hits up the front office of Philadelphia 76ers. Your team needs shooter? I'm a shooter. Nick Young, if your agent is not calling the 76ers for a little reunion, your agent is tripping. But I know Philadelphia 76ers fans, you're going to be hyped by having Jimmy Butler, but I know there's probably a small bit of you that's sad that Rocco is gone and Dario is gone. Rocco was the last remaining piece of that 76er team that won 10 games back in the day. He was the only guy to survive it, and now he's gone. So, I mean, that part sucks, but again, you get a start in Jimmy Butler to help you compete. Now, the big variable in this whole situation is that is Jimmy Butler going to resign? That's just the big variable. Will Jimmy Butler resign? And I guess we won't know this until the season is over and all, but it matters. And if I'm grading the 76ers, giving up Rocco and giving up Dario for a superstar in Jimmy Butler, I'm giving this like an A-. But again, all my grades can change once we see them on the court together after a couple games. But initial reactions, those are it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of this trade. There are a lot of people I saw on Twitter that hated this trade for both sides. If you're one of those people, explain to me why in the comment section. I'll be reading through it. The podcast is Through the Wire also drops later today. I'm not sure exactly what time, but you should be subscribed to House of Highlights. If you're watching this later in the day, I'll have the time card. We also go more in depth with the trade and other things going on around the league. So if you're a fan of podcasts, you got an extra 50 minutes. Yeah, 50 minutes of basketball talk. Link will be in the description eventually. Thank y'all so much. This is Kenny. Enjoy y'all some football or some NBA if you just like me.